Good Sunday to you, my friends, and welcome to not really the SitRep, kind of SitRep, I guess there's a situation going on that we need to discuss. But welcome to you, wherever you are, whether you're watching this on Instagram, on YouTube, or listening to the audio-only version of it on on whatever application you decide to use to listen to podcasts. And missing out on my hairy face. Good morning to you, Commie Hunter. I hope you're doing well. So, I was playing cards last night. Had a couple of drinks, which, my aged body does not deal so well with. I mean, it's fine, but it's not like I'm 23 anymore. And I thought, bugger it, I'm not going to do a SitRep today. It's Sunday. Let's just let people rest. It's a day of rest, right? In one of those books. And then, of course, I opened up my phone and flooded with the news that that bridge going into Crimea has been partially destroyed, not totally destroyed, partially destroyed. And that's going to cause some issues, obviously. So I think that's something that we probably needed to discuss today, have a bit of a chat about it. So I'm not really going to be talking about a whole heap of news stories today. It's just going to be focusing on that. And we'll see what kind of rant comes out of this morning. Anyway, it has been pissing down here in Australia, especially on the East Coast overnight. Well, for the past couple of days, really. I mean, for the past months, it's been raining on and off. But certainly overnight, we had a big. I think it was actually described as a supercell hit into sweep across the East Coast. It was coming from west to east. Dumped a lot of rain, a lot of localized flooding, a lot of slightly larger flooding as well, especially in up and around Sydney region. So thinking about you guys up there, I hope everyone's all right. I hope your feet are dry. Mine certainly are not. I just took the dog for a walk and there is a lot of groundwater. My driveway at the moment looks like a series of natural ponds, up to and including, probably about 30 centimeters in depth, some of them. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at, rain-wise, and more on the way too. So we're predicted more rain to come. In fact, they're predicting the next 3 months is going to be a lot of rain here in Australia. So let's see how that goes. The ground is already soaked, absolutely soaked. So one of the issues that we're facing at the moment is that when you've got a lot of rain, you've got a lot of water in on the ground, and in the water level, the table is up. Any fresh rain that comes in kind of just sits there and starts flowing on and creates flooding effects. So that's what we're seeing at the moment. A lot of flooding going on. Apart from that, what's actually happening with this Crimea situation, and why is it important? Why is it important to us? Obviously, I've been talking about this and mainly from the context of a worldwide strategical sort of view on it. What we're looking at here is nothing short of the potential for nuclear war. And I don't want to really, throw that out willy-nilly or wily-nilly, because that's quite an inflammatory comment. These things shouldn't be really thrown around probably as much as they are being thrown around at the moment. But certainly, there's been nothing that's been mitigating that at the moment. Things have been going that way and tend to have been tending towards build-up rather than de-escalation. And this is yet another thing. This is the latest and greatest of the events that have happened on the world scale, centered around this Ukrainian conflict. So there was a large explosion that actually occurred there on that bridge. Now, that bridge is, the report I read was the longest bridge that Russia's ever built. It connects the Russian mainland to Crimea, which is this small island type inlet that is, or was, and still is, according to a lot of people in the world, part of Ukraine, but was annexed by Russia in 2014. And you could argue that this entire conflict really kicked off then, 2014. What we're seeing now is the next stage of that conflict, and rapid escalation of that conflict, obviously. But 2014 is when this all sort of went down, and that's when the sanctions first started getting laid on pretty thickly onto Russia, which, again, you could argue create the environment in which Russia in 2022 felt it necessary to then actually move into the Ukraine. And obviously, there's been a lot of things that have happened in those 8 years in between those 2 points. Not least of all, what's been happening in the Donbass region. And again, you could argue that this is Russia's plan all the way from the start, and it certainly fits their MO. If you've ever looked at what they've done before, I won't go into it too much, but I would recommend a book called The Shadow War by Jim Scuto, I think, off the top of my head. And in there, like in that book, there was a concept that I was introduced to when I first read it called Little Green Men. And it's essentially Russia's way of implanting people into a country to incite some sort of issues, some sort of unrest or something similar to that, and then using that as a pretext for them to actually step in and do more. So anyway, this bridge was attacked, there was an explosion on the bridge overnight, which destroyed one lane of the bridge. There's a second lane that is still operational, according to the video and according to reports on that. And there's also a train way that goes across that bridge as well on a separate part of it, which is just sitting off of it, which it was transporting. The report I read was transporting oil products. So obviously when it got hit or when the explosion happened, whatever that was, and there's a number of potential things that could have been, which I'll discuss in a second, that also ignited that freight train. And you might have seen the video of like these roiling flames kicking up over the higher section. That's that train actually that's going on there. So some of the reports that came out said it was destroyed, and later reports have said, I mean, you can actually see it on the video. People are filming it. Also, I will say this too. I've watched a number of the videos now. I've watched probably about 5 or 6 separate videos and maybe half a dozen photographs of this event. And some of them, I'm like, clearly this is not of this event. This is of the bridge, and somebody's cashing in here. There was ones where it was like clearly daylight. There are ones where it's clearly at night. So just be wary when you're watching these videos that there is some fake stuff out there. And there's, certainly some people who are trying to like instigate some things that are going on here. Just try and figure out the validity yourself. It's good little exercise to do that whenever you get these sorts of pieces of information. Go, what's going on here? The explosion itself, I've seen 2 different separate angles of the explosion. One of them it appears to be CCTV footage or something similar. That's a set camera from a distance, and you can see the explosion go off. Another one appears to be from a dashboard cam driving behind the truck at a distance of, I want to say, maybe 800 to 1,000 meters, and you see it go off. The alleged truck that exploded. But again, like, I can't verify any of this sort of stuff, this footage. The reports are saying that it was a truck, so a car bomb, an IED sort of device that went off, which it may have been. I do have actually a bit of experience with explosives. I have worked with explosives in my military career. It was actually part of my job. I was the kind of the detonation guy, the explosives sort of guy within my team, which in no way, shape or form is a full expert on explosives, but I was trained in basic explosive devices and how to create them and how to, I shouldn't say that, I'll probably get put on a fucking watch list or something now. But, from a military perspective, how to mainly breach into places. But we had to learn about explosives and things like that. So I'm watching it, and I'm always interested in footage of explosions and things like that to, further my knowledge so I can understand them to a greater depth and understand what actually happened in certain areas. So what, my assessment of it, I'm looking at it, and there's a few things that already I'm a bit like, okay. Just knowing how, like, a basic principle of explosives is the propagation of detonation. So you can understand that I mean, explosion is essentially a very quick burning fire, a very quick burning substance. If you put a log on the fire, it burns from one end to the other in, I don't know, half an hour, whatever. An explosive device or high explosives will burn from one end to the other in the fraction of a second. And that obviously displaces a lot of energy when it does it. That's essentially an explosion. Very, 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 very quick burning material, I guess would be one way to put it. If we, we can frame it that way. So that knowing that is interesting because when they explode, they have a certain level of predictability that we can see, and that there should be certain patterns and certain things that happen that you would expect to see with these things. Obviously, there's any number of variables in the real world that can change this sort of stuff. Now, what I'm viewing here. I'm viewing one of the footage and you can see the truck clearly, and then there's a very bright flash where the next, I've slowed it down to go actually frame by frame, and it just goes white. That's kind of expected. Like you don't usually see it go unless you've got a bit of distance and a very high quality camera. Sorry, I'll just take a step back here. Take the ride just jumped on. There was a major, the major bridge, the arterial that connects Russia mainland to Crimea. There was an explosion on that last night, which caused a lot of damage. Didn't take out the entire bridge, but has collapsed portions of the bridge, and may have. I've seen reports on both of these, may have crippled the rail of that. But essentially, this is one of the main ways that Russia can supply Crimea at this stage, or has been supplying Crimea, and especially with military elements and things like that. Obviously, no one's come out yet and said, hands up, that was us. A lot of people are saying it was Ukraine. Ukraine did it. Counter to that, there are a few voices saying Russia might have done it to themselves to instigate further aggression, legitimize further aggression. Everything's possible at the moment. It's like, Nord Stream as well. We've got to think about that. Who benefits ultimately from doing this, I think, is the way we really should start tackling this. Start looking at it a bit critically and go, okay, who is actually benefiting from this attack? Who is being crippled by it, or who is being impeded by it? And what flow-on effects will there be from it? And then we can maybe start to piece together why it was done. But at the end of the day, it was done. We can see that whether it was a truck explosion or something else, just on that, my viewing of that one angle of the explosion, that you can see a lot of debris coming up from over the side of the bridge, which potentially could happen if we're looking at a truck sitting on a bridge and it's in the right-hand lane, and then the bridge cuts off there. As the explosion goes out, it goes in 360, so there's going to be a wraparound effect around there slightly, and then the prevailing wind obviously is going that way, so it's pulling a lot of that debris back over. That could be it, or it could be something exploding, i.e. a missile, hitting the bridge and kicking up that stuff there, or it could have been detonation charges underneath the bridge, although that one, looking at the photographs that I saw afterwards, it's possible, but it didn't, to me, initially look like a controlled detonation, like somebody would plant something there and explode. But it totally could have been. I have if somebody came out and said, yes, 100% I know it is, then I would go, okay, first off, prove it to me. But but I wouldn't be totally like, no, you're a liar. No, it can't be that. Peter Rouse says, Russia has taken down Starlink in Ukraine. I have not seen anything like that. And I would be curious as to how they would do that. One of my compatriots during the week was showing me so that you can log on. I can't remember what the site is now, but you can basically go on and you can see where every satellite is around the Earth right now. And so he goes, yep, here's all the satellites around the Earth. I'm like, oh, that's a fair amount. He goes, yeah, hang on, that's not Starlink. Now I'll just take those ones off and I'll do Starlink, and it's just a blanket around the Earth. You can see where every Starlink satellite is right now. And certainly, yeah, you could perhaps disrupt over a country, but I would be curious actually to know how they would achieve that, how they would do that. Again, not saying that it can't be done or it hasn't been done. I haven't seen anything on this, Peter. So please feel free to flick me through anything that you find. Morning to you, Chris. Morning, Peter, by the way. Thank you for joining me again. I always appreciate it. Charlie Cause says reports are saying Elon took it down. Interesting, maybe. But again, I haven't seen any of these reports yet. But yeah, getting back onto this bridge here, this explosion, what are the major implications of this? Obviously, we're sitting at a point where we're very, very close to nuclear war. Or this part of the world is very, very close to the potential of a tactical nuclear weapon possibly being utilized. This obviously increases the level of that happening, and in a number of ways. One of the other ways that's happened is that Russia's come out and said, "All right, we're putting a different general in charge now." And I read the guy's name and I've totally forgotten it. Maybe because it's something Russian, but I'm just blanking on the name. But I remember the nickname. I think I remember the nickname. It was either General Armageddon. Was this person's nickname? So it was the Air Force chief that they basically put in charge. So for those who don't know, rough workings of a lot of militaries around the world, we've kind of got generally 3 or 4 streams of military. So like in Australia, we've got Air Force, Navy, Army. There's other parts and there's other things you could say that are in there, but that's generally your 3 pillars of your defense force. And they've all got a head on top of them. So somebody who's in charge of them. But then you need somebody who's in charge of that. And they kind of do a rotating system. So they go, okay, for the next 2-4 years, whatever it is, Army, you get to be ahead of it. So they send a general up, and that Army general is in charge of the entire military. And generally, what this means is that there's kind of a favoritism towards that division or that part of a military force. When I say for too, like the US have Marines as well, which kind of are a bit of a mix of all 3. They're their own thing though. But the Australian military certainly does this. And then sometimes you'll get an Air Force and sometimes you get a Navy person in charge of that. So they've said, okay, in charge of this theater of war here is Air Force. So you can start to predict, look forward now and go, maybe more air assets might start getting utilized in this conflict now. Maybe we might see an increase in that. Certainly if a arterial, which is ground-based, has been impacted like it has been, that we've seen overnight with this bridge, that's going to increase the chances that they're going to look at naval or airlift options to get things into the Crimean area, which means there's going to be an increase in air activity. And obviously an increase in air activity, I would think personally, also increases the chance of things like, warheads, nuclear warheads and things like that being flown around. So this is one of the things that we're looking at with this whole situation. I think it was Lavrov definitely came out, or it was Lavrov or Medvedev, but one of those 2 came out and in no sort of uncertain terms laid down a bit of like, there will be repercussions for this. Like there will be punishment, I think was the word that was used for, translated to, for this actual strike. So, this is pretty big stuff that's going on from this. Like I said, I wasn't going to get on today. I was just going to leave it. Partly, I thought I'll get on today because I may not have a chance to do another SitRep for the next 3 or 4 days. So I thought, bang one out now. And and the other part of it was that this news came on. I was like, well, this is kind of important. This is something that people should be maybe starting to think about and look at. Again, how does this actually affect us, and how does this change our behavior here in Australia and New Zealand? Not a whole deal, But there are other things that are going on here that I'll just slightly touch on. There's definitely an increase in activity between North and South Korea, and the US is involved in this as well. Like I said yesterday, they've moved an aircraft carrier. They're conducting exercises with South Korea at the moment. So there's an increase there. China is still flying sorties over Taiwanese airspace. There's still things going on there. It has taken a back step, but it's still going on there. And I think it's taken like here's my if I can put my tinfoil hat on for a second. Here's my little theory about that. The US has done a bit of analysis and figured out that they cannot fight a war on three fronts, being Korea, Ukraine, and China. So they've had to pick one and say, let's detense this one for now, or let's make this disappear for now, because that's exactly what's happened. So Ukraine is going to do what Ukraine does. That whole war there is going to do what it does. They can't, like, the cat's out of the bag there, and US doesn't seem in any way, shape, or form interested in even slowing that down. In fact, they seem quite the opposite, like they're going to increase that one. Yet now we're seeing North Korea kick up. Interestingly, there was a release from US where I think it was one of their generals, the Pentagon, came out and said, "Oh, look, we actually assess right now that the likelihood that China will move on Taiwan is very low right now, very, very low." And I read that and I was like, "What? What? That's the opposite to what you've been saying now for the past month. Like the exact opposite. That's interesting in of itself." All of a sudden, news reports. I've watched a dramatic drop in news reports about China news, about Taiwan news. It's still there. You can dig it. You can dig and find it. It's still definitely there, but it's just not really being reported at the moment. So clearly, there's been some sort of suppression here on that information coming out of that area, and I think it's because US, probably rightly so, is figuring out that there's no way they can fight a war on three fronts, and it wouldn't even be a war on three fronts, because they would have I think Iran, Israel, or Middle East area would kick up. You'd see increased tensions in places like Azerbaijan and somebody help me out here. I'm totally blanking on it. The country that they're bordering with. Geography fail. Armenia. And you would start to see other increases in tensions in places like Pakistan, India, and things like that. Not necessarily that the US would be involved in that, but the US is looking at this, I would imagine, and going, "Hey, this is already too big. If this one or two other things kick off, probably we'll get 4, 5, and 6 follow on. We'll get these people asking for our help. We ain't got that." Remember, I was reporting last week, or I wasn't reporting this. I was channeling this information to you from other reports, from people, from actual reporters who report on stuff, that the US missed their recruiting target this year by 25%. They only got 75% of the people they wanted or needed into their military this year. So they're looking at this and they're going, "Hey, things are like, we don't have enough to fight this right now." And I would say, yeah, you're right. You don't. One of these things would be big enough, but 3 of them, way too much. Just catch up on some of these comments here. Take the Ride says, "Russia once defeated Napoleon by taking out bridges where Napoleon's army could not get supplies, and they froze to death." So maybe a historian here is using their tactics against them, or maybe not. But the bridge was not destroyed and is already open again for traffic. Yes, like I at no point said it was destroyed, Peter. I very much said it had been attacked, that there'd been an explosion on it, and one lane is still working or one side, I should say, is still working. The other side there's collapsed sections in it, only in one section of it though. So yes, they are. It is still open. They still can move traffic. Obviously, it's impeded significantly from this, and I'm yet to see, Peter, as well. Because I've seen both reports of this, that the rail has actually been cut off, and I've also seen some report that said the rail may still be working. So definitely impeded, though. Definitely impeded them from moving things freely throughout here. Another interesting thing on this bridge, huge, long bridge, massive undertaking. Allegedly, there are scanners on this bridge. So they scan vehicles and especially trucks that are going through there for explosives. So that was another thing. Whether that scanning doesn't happen, whether that's just a lie, or whether the scanning failed, or whether maybe the truck wasn't the culprit of this explosion. So there's some other things to throw into the mix for you for information on this as well. Sorry, you said it there. I didn't read the end of your comment. Rail expected back on by Monday. Take the Ride said Russia is not sabotaging itself. People like to blame Russia for everything, and I agree with you there. I personally, this is just my personal take on it, I do not think Russia did this to themselves, because I do not think that they need any other excuse to legitimize whatever they would do as a reaction to this. I don't think they'd need to go, oh, you blew up our bridge and did this on our land, on our sacred, on our sovereign territory, and this is a civilian target, blah blah blah. So now we can do X, Y, and Z. I don't think they need that. I really don't. Reading the information that comes out of Russia, they feel like they fully believe that they are legitimized in what they're doing right now. So why would they do this? Maybe to convince the international community. I think it's quite clear at this point that Russia gives zero fucks about the international community's thoughts, prayers, ideas, or anything. They will do what they will do and be damned with what the international community thinks about this. So, the idea that Russia did this to itself, it's a pretty tenuous link. Again, in my opinion, feel free to argue with that. Just on the comments here, take the Ride. I don't think Peter's repeating himself. It's just that I was asking the question again, so he reiterated what he put there because I forgot to read the last part of his comment. Luke Knowles says, I've read the truck was transporting fertilizer, components obviously being combustible with correct ratios. Perhaps scanners didn't pick this up for that reason. That is possible. It is possible that there's a couple of things where I'm a bit like, this didn't. So fertilizer in the form of ammonium nitrate can form into an explosive matter when mixed with other things and in the right conditions. And we know this because we've seen very large explosions like the one that happened in Lebanon a couple of years ago on their docks. The difference being that kind of explosion, and I'm not saying it wasn't that, it totally could have been that, but that kind of explosion is actually called low explosives, or a shifting charge or a lifting charge is what they're quite often called. You would use this to move a great amount of matter. So you would use this sort of thing in things like mining if you wanted to move a great amount of earth or anything like that. Again, I'll just put the caveat in here. I'm not an explosives expert. I just have done this at some stage in my life. So if you do know more about this, please let me know. Now, looking at that explosion that I saw on the two videos that I watched, it didn't play out like, I'll put it this way. It did not look like a low explosive charge detonation that I have personally seen in the past. When I've seen them, when I've done them, there's a certain look and feel to them. Generally, it's something like a big shock wave that comes out and then a huge sort of cloud, and the impact that it has pushes things. This didn't look like it to me. If I had to guess, I would say it looked more like a missile explosion. That's what it looked like to me. But again, I'm not the world's expert on this. It's just, and these are just theories right now. Like we don't have any totally solid information coming out on it. Or maybe, Luke, one of the things with a low explosive is that you need an initiator. Well, I mean, you need an initiator for any explosive, but a high explosive going off would initiate a low explosive charge like fertilizer. So maybe, the truck was packed full of fertilizer and then was hit by something else. I don't know. Let me take my tinfoil hat off at the moment. I left that one on too long. Anyway, so that's the state of play as I've seen it thus far. That's the amount of information that I've been able to dig up, which is very little about this. But this is definitely, I think, an escalation that we should probably pay attention to on what's going around the world. There will be some sort of consequence from this. What it is, I don't know. I don't think it'll be super quick. I will tag this one up. Here's the little asterisk here. Every time I have said, I don't think Russia will do this super quick, they've come in and done something pretty super quick, like relatively super quick, like within days. I think there will be some sort of response here from Russia. What it is, I don't know. Likelihood that it would be nuclear, I think is very, very low at this point. But, we're going down a dark path at the moment, which kind of leads in that general area, somewhere where we don't really want to go. So that's it on that, I think, for today, unless anyone else has got something super exciting or other thoughts or ideas that they want to pop up in there. But apart from that, again, how does this affect us? How do we change our behavior here in Australia? Not so much. We don't really need to do anything different than we've been doing. The big lesson that I think I take out of this, I mean, there are a number of smaller sort of lessons, but I'm going, hey, I'm looking at the trends that we're seeing within the news. I'm trying to lick my finger, put it up in the air, and see which way the wind is blowing right now, and figure out what we need to do because of that. We're clearly heading into a point of, dare I say it, war that involves the majority of the world, if you can understand that. World War III, right? And I've said this before. I think my belief on this is that unless there is some drastic change in things in the not too distant future, and I'm talking about in the next couple of weeks, then in history, I think we'll look back and probably start to look at time periods like February 24th, 2022, as the point where World War III kicked off. I actually believe that we are involved in a world conflict at the moment, and we just need to act as such. So Peter Rouse says, buy more ammo. I mean, buy more everything. We still have access to everything. We still have access to so much food in our supermarkets. We still have access to wholesale places like your Costco's and things like that. Your warehouse, your Bunnings warehouse, and your Mitre 10s and that, they're all still there. We can still get stuff. We've still got time and space to earn money. We've still got a postal system that works. You can go and buy stuff, get it sent to you. There's still lithium batteries and things like that out there. We can still get generators. We can do the things now to set ourselves up to be more self-sustainable. And that should apply whether the world goes to absolute hell in a handbasket or whether things do take a very perpendicular angle and we come out of this and we're okay and life goes back to normal. I don't think it's going back to like normal, what we've known it, but some sense of normalcy. Personally, I don't think we're heading on that direction. I think we're heading in the other direction. So that's sort of where I'm thinking and planning. But the way I plan, the way I prep, I try and open up that gamut. So I'm not, stocking a doomsday bunker with beans, bullets, and band-aids and thinking this is it. I'm buying, there might be a bit of that sort of action going on, but I'm buying stuff that I use every day. I'm just buying more of it and storing more of it. And then I'm learning how to create more of it, i.e., let's take the example of food. Okay, how do I create more food? So I garden, I go and practice gardening, and I fail and I suck at it. And then, like today, my gardens are actually going off at the moment. It is like wonder of wonders. All this rain with sporadic sunshine is actually working its ass off right now for my garden. So it's pumping right now. But it might be medicine. Can I get more medical, devices or equipment, more bandages, more things like that I can store up long term? And then can I figure out how to create those things? Can I figure out how to maybe take on a bit more information for things like first aid or even minor medical issues that I can look after myself? Can I figure out how to make medicines? So many of the modern day medicines that we have a natural or a herbal equivalent is where they came from. So can I start to learn that as well? So these are all the sorts of things that while we've got the time and space, and we're in a very fortunate position where we can look forward and go like, okay, we can see some shit coming down the pipeline here. You know what? Let's just prepare for that. Let's put a raincoat on so we don't get covered in shit. How does that sound? Now's the time to be doing this. And I keep pointing out places like Africa because they're getting, like, many of the countries in there are going to get hit first or are getting hit first. They don't have time to figure out how to grow their own food. They're starving today, right now. I just saw another story about Ebola breakout, and I'm like, yeah, you're going to get disease breakouts when people can't get enough nutrition, when they can't get enough food. These are things that they follow one from the other. It's why the book of Revelations, you got the 4 horsemen. They actually, like, all of those 4 horsemen are interconnected. They're actually all the one thing. I'm not trying to get biblical on you or anything. I'm just like trying to point this out, that famine and pestilence and war and death follow one from the other or interconnect with each other. Hamptons in the Highlands. It's a lovely name. Hamptons in the Highlands. What is your view on safety to travel to Europe in December this year, specifically Switzerland, France, and the UK? I just got a message actually from a friend in Switzerland, enjoying a great time, hanging out by one of the lakes there with their kid. And the vibe there is very chilled. I also got a message from my friend last week in France. The vibe there, not so chilled. I haven't talked to anyone specifically on the ground in the UK, and I know there are quite a few people from the UK who actually jump in and watch these every now and then. So if you are there, please send me a message and let me know what the vibe is, what's going on, and what you think it'll be like in December. My take on it is this. If I had plans to go to this part of the world, I would still do it. Okay, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going and hiding in my bunker right now. I'm not going to curtail all of my life because I think doomsday is coming. I think that's kind of foolish. But I am going to travel with an increased level of situational awareness and preparedness when I go overseas. So especially, I would say, in order, UK probably most dangerous or precarious, France, Switzerland maybe not so much. And there's various reasons for that and some counter reasons for those two, but that's the very basic of what I see it as. So certainly when I'm in the UK and France, France in particular, because they love a good riot, that's something I would be thinking about, preparing myself for the potential of civil unrest or being in and around civil unrest. So dealing with that, how to deal with that, and equipment I would want to carry. And I would also be making sure that I have a good escape plan. This is a general security principle whenever I'm teaching security courses and stuff. It's one of the golden rules, always have an escape plan. So always thinking about this. How do I get out of this room? How do I get out of this building? How do I get out of this area around the building? How do I get out of this block? How do I get out of this suburb? How do I get out of this city? How do I get out of this country back to my country? So having that kind of plan built in, having mechanisms built in, having safety lines or emergency contacts that you can contact. And if you're traveling with other people and families and things like that, making sure that you build in things like rendezvous points and, in case of emergency plans, what happens if, or actions on, as we would call them in the military, actions on being lost, actions on lost communications, actions on being caught in a riot, actions on no transportation, actions on lockdown, all that sort of stuff. Election results in New Zealand for local elections was very good for freedom in New Zealand. Peter Rouse says Jacinta's days are numbered. That's good. I like freedom. I like people having the choice to do things that they want to do. I consider myself rather libertarian-minded when it comes to my philosophical outlook on life, mainly. So that's good. That's good news. Glad to hear it, Peter, that New Zealand is starting to gear themselves towards being more freedom, or more free in their population. Fingers crossed that maybe one day Australia can follow. Although I don't have a lot of faith right now, to be honest. All right, I'm going to wrap it up for today. Sorry, and as I said earlier, not sure exactly when I'll be able to do another one. I'm pretty busy over the next couple of days, traveling, working, teaching. I'll try and get one out as soon as I can. And of course, if any other major information comes out, I might do just a quick one. But I hope you're all doing well. You're all safe. If you are on the east coast of Australia, that you're keeping dry on this Sunday. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you are continuing to prepare and doing it from a point of confidence, not from fear. But that is it for today. So enjoy the rest of your day, gang. As always, if you've got any other questions, please shoot them through to me. Ooh, here's one. Thank you, Stu. What mini survival pack would you take for a family of 4, 19, 17-year-old, and 2 adults? I would make sure everyone has their own pack, not just one sort of survival pack. And even just everyone's got their own bag, whether it be a grab bag, a messenger bag, a satchel like Indiana Jones, or a backpack, and you just kit those things out with stuff that you might need. So, a way to filter water, or having extra water in there, maybe some sort of spare clothes or something that you can change, maybe something that you can cover your face with and cover your eyes with when I'm thinking about things like civil unrest, if you're moving in and around those sort of places. Keeping it small, keeping it lightweight as best as possible increases the likelihood that you will actually carry that stuff. And of course, med kits and things like that, always good to have. Apart from that, though, no specific recommendations. I think, this is something you got to nut out yourself, because your status, your skills, your resources, what you can afford, where you're going to be going, and what your plan is for where you're going to get to. So, I'm always a little bit amused when I see these sort of articles or YouTube videos coming out going, right, this is the grab bag that you have to have. You must have this, you must have that. And it's like, well, some of that might not apply to my situation. You have to have, at least 1 9mm in there. And it's like, I'm in Australia, bro. Like, that's not going to happen. We can't carry weapons around. Give me another option. So yeah, just think about what you want to achieve and what things you might have that would help you achieve that. One big thing I'll just chuck in there, though: always have a form of navigation, always have a form of communication, and 2 is 1, 1 is none. So if you have your phone and that's your only way to navigate and communicate, and that breaks, that gets stolen, that runs out of batteries, then you have neither of those 2 things. So thinking about what redundancy can I have? I sometimes travel with my Garmin InReach, which has InReach Plus Explorer, which has maps on it, so I can load up maps. I can navigate with that. It's also emergency communications. I can connect to satellite and send text messages through that, or I can preload it with text messages like an emergency. And it's got an SOS button for sending out a signal that something is very, very wrong and I need help now. So that might be a form of something you do, or it could be like UHF radios I've used, especially when you're thinking about a small team like you might have, or a family, some people call them. When I want to communicate with that small team and, maybe I might be separated from them, not necessarily want to use the phone. So UHF radios might be a good idea too. But do your research on UHF radios too, because they're not all created equal. UHF bands and CB bands and things in Australia may not work, and I don't think they do. They're not the same ones as in UK. So you're going to need to do your research and figure out what UHF radio you would use in areas like that. All right, that's it for today. Thank you very much. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Take the Ride. Thanks, who else was there? Chris. Thanks, Hampton in the Highlands. Thanks, who else was on here? Charlie Cause. Peter again. There's one more person. Where are you? Commie Hunter? Who else commented? It was what? If I've forgotten you, I apologize, but I thank you anyway. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. Thanks everyone who's been hitting thumbs up buttons and subscribe buttons and all that kind of good gear. I appreciate it. I like it. It lets me know that at least something that I'm doing is half worthwhile. So I'll continue doing it. Until next time, gang, stay safe out there. Keep your eyes open. And as always, Semper Paratus.